Oh my God.
Whoa.
Holy.
This is weird.
From encountering 3 strange humanoid creatures in the woods to a man capturing clear images of Bigfoot, the proof has finally been found. Bigfoot territory markers. During one of their expeditions, Bryce and Mireya from Expedition Bigfoot came across something they could not explain in the woods. As they searched the woods for clues, they saw a massive tree structure unlike anything they had ever seen. Though they had found similar structures before, like one in Alaska, this one was far bigger and harder to explain. They couldn't figure out how it was made or who might have created it. To Bryce, this was amazing, while to Mireya, this was quite odd. They both saw the way the trees were set up, looking like they formed a shelter. But the shelter-like structure was huge, about 15 feet high, almost like a Bigfoot house. And there was more. The top of the structure stood out. The trees were carefully and intentionally woven together by someone or something with intelligence. It felt like more than just nature at work. In their expertise, they knew that this could not have been done by a human being, since the structure was deep in the woods and no logging activity was present in the area. After a deeper examination of the tree structure, Bryce came up with the theory that no ordinary animal could have done this. On top of that, to Bryce, this tree structure could not have been built by just anyone or anything.
Holy.
This is weird.
This is amazing.
That is really, really bizarre.
Mireya, this is huge.
It looked like a group effort. There were about a dozen logs, each weighing 150 to 200 pounds, arranged with intricate designs. He thought the structure was odd and believed it would have taken several men to build it. The purpose? A complete mystery. So what or who really built these structures, and for what? Having seen similar structures in their previous expeditions in different parts of the world, they were now joining the dots. At this point, Bryce was very optimistic about this finding, but Mireya didn't seem to think that the structure was that significant. Though their points of view were different, they both agreed the structure was an excellent spot to search for DNA. They believed that if the structure was made and not natural, whoever or whatever created it must have left some evidence of their presence behind. As they searched for anything they could use for DNA tests, Bryce argued that if the structure was built by someone or something, then it must have had a purpose. Bryce believed the tree structure was a Bigfoot boundary marker, showing their nesting territory.
Yeah, this to me eliminates the idea that those first 2 structures were perhaps natural. This was put here for a purpose.
So what are you saying? Like, you think this is some sort of...
A boundary marking. This is nesting territory.
He explained they were right in the center of it. Mireya noticed his excitement, and while agreeing that the structure was interesting based on his analysis, she cautioned against jumping to conclusions too quickly. That was just like Mireya, always urging caution. A scientist in her own right takes a logical approach to gathering data and evidence of pseudoscience beliefs. Mireya's role in the team was clear. She focused on analyzing pseudoscientific data and presenting it in a way that mainstream science could accept. She believed the team needed to speak the language of their critics. By doing this, she aimed to provide logical proof of Bigfoot's existence, bridging the gap between skepticism and belief. For this reason, Mireya was always careful and hesitant when it came to calling something evidence of strange findings. She never saw the tree structure as proof of anything. Instead, it simply reminded her of a similar tree structure they had once found in Kentucky. For Mireya, it was more of a memory than anything to be proven. And Kentucky was an interesting place, since the crew had gotten some of their most interesting DNA results.
I'm always really careful and hesitant not to use the word evidence. What it did remind me of instantly, though, was that tree structure that we had found in Kentucky. And that's where we had gotten some of our most interesting DNA results.
Understanding where Mireya was coming from, Bryce agreed, and they decided to look for more clues. Mireya decided to search for possible samples beneath the structure, while Bryce examined the outside for any clues that might help with their research. The area surrounding the structure gave the team several potential samples to examine later, which filled them with hope for their investigation. They felt optimistic, as the samples they found could potentially provide valuable insights. Their hopes were high, and the discovery of the samples seemed promising for the progress of their work. That is, if these samples turned out to belong to a creature they had not yet encountered. According to Mireya, if the findings in an expedition are isolated and far apart, they do not end up being so significant. However, when they discovered multiple samples across different locations and investigations, it raised a big question. Were these pieces of evidence part of something much larger? As they searched the structures for more clues, Bryce came across some hair samples. He then called Mireya to check them out.
Hey, Mireya.
What is it?
It looks like a hair.
Where are you seeing it?
All right over here. Check it out. Right?
Oh yeah, no.
Doesn't that look like a hair?
That looks like a hair.
After obtaining the samples, Bryce expressed his interest in taking the hair to the lab for DNA examination. This structure was turning out to be quite a strange one. Not only was it weird looking, but it also had multiple samples of hair all over and around it. Whether or not the samples belonged to Bigfoot or they belonged to a curious bear was something they could not tell by just looking at the hair samples. They needed to send these samples to the lab for a deeper analysis. For what it's worth, these findings increased their hunger for the truth, and so, to get more clues, they decided to go deeper into the forest and explore more areas like the riverbanks, a common place to find potential clues since all creatures must drink water. But nothing could prepare them for what they were about to experience that night, at least for Bryce.
I think that we need to keep pushing through tonight and keep going down this river and see if it leads us somewhere else.
100% agree. We are hot on the trail. Let's keep going.
Bryce gets stalked. Bryce had set up a base in the forest to observe everything around him. He thought that since Bigfoot would not reveal himself directly to them during the day, spying the area at night in stealth mode would enable them to capture clear footage of the creature. Inside the tent he had pitched, he arranged every piece of equipment a scientist could get his hands on, determined to gather as much information as possible. Aware he was in a dangerous, unexplored area, Bryce took every step to ensure he wasn't detected by any creature of the night. But how could he avoid being noticed in a tent? The tent he used was unlike any other. Its fabric was designed to block all EMF frequencies from the research equipment, turning it into a giant frequency cage. With the EMF blocked, anything inside the tent became invisible to creatures sensitive to changes in frequency. He had an idea of what this simple setup would mean for their safety that night. But that's not all he had. Bryce had set up thermal cameras all around the tent to catch heat signatures at night, along with infrared cameras to see in the dark. These cameras were placed in different directions to cover as much ground as possible and detect any threats near the tent. While the cameras handled the visuals, Bryce had also set up parabolic microphones to pick up even the faintest sounds from anything that might be hiding in the woods nearby. If something approached his position, he would see it or hear it. At least that's what he thought.
I've got thermal setup, I've got infrared, I've got north, south, east, and west covered, but I've also set up a parabolic microphone faced in that direction, so anything making noise, walking through the brush, we're gonna be able to hear it.
With all this tech and the invisibility cloak for a tent, he must have been feeling quite invincible, but he was not as undetectable as he thought. Bryce sat quietly, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever was out there. As he waited, his parabolic microphone picked up strange sounds near his tent. Though he couldn't see anything, he felt sure something was hiding in the woods. He listened carefully, praying that whatever was making the noises would appear on his camera. As dangerous as it was for him to expose himself like that, he hoped to capture solid proof of Bigfoot.
Something is definitely moving outside of our cave.
Judging by the nature of the sound he heard, Bryce knew that the creature making them had to be large in size. But the fact that he could not spot it on any of the cameras gave Bryce the creeps, since he felt like he was being watched by something he could not see. For this reason, he kept his eyes peeled, looking at the video feed from all the screens, hoping to catch the creature causing the noises. Bryce tried to calm himself, thinking it was just a bear or a deer messing with him. But deep down, his survival instincts wouldn't let him ignore the thought of something smarter, something dangerous, something hiding, watching from behind trees, waiting for the right moment. Bryce couldn't shake the feeling that an intelligent predator had its eye on him. And then it happened. As he observed the screens, one of them caught a fast flash of light. Something had run past one of the cameras. Before he could make sense of what he had seen, Bryce saw another light a bit further in the distance. At this point, he knew that his visual detection equipment was definitely working, but what he could not help but wonder was whether the strange, elusive creatures were hunting him or just surrounding his tent in curiosity.
Oh, did you? Guys, something just moved across there, guys. Oh my God, look at this. Look at this. Right here.
Before he could understand what was making the noise, he saw it. Hiding behind a tree a few meters away from the tent, his thermal camera spotted something moving.
That's what's making our noise.
Bryce sat in the tent, listening carefully to the noises outside. The sounds grew closer, and when he checked the thermal camera, he noticed a head peeking through the trees as if whatever was watching knew that he was there. He tried to keep an eye on the equipment, but his focus was drawn to the movement on the screen. Suddenly, something swiped across the camera's view. At that moment, a chilling thought crept over him. There wasn't just one creature out there. He was being watched by more than one, and he was alone.
Then, as I'm trying to monitor all this equipment, out of my periphery, I see something swipe through my camera, and I'm starting to get the feeling that there's more than one of these creatures observing me.
Bryce stayed hidden, knowing the risk he was taking. If anything found him, he'd be in real trouble. Bigfoot was unpredictable, especially when someone got too close to its territory, and Bryce was right in the middle of it. The thought of this made him even more fearful. The tent, though cleverly hidden, was his only shield. Its strength wasn't in keeping predators out, it was in staying undetectable. If any creature, Bigfoot or otherwise, picked up his presence, there'd be no stopping an attack.
Even though I feel very secure in this tent, it's an illusion. This is just fabric, and I'm not protected. I just
But Bryce, although frightened, did not stop the creatures from making more sounds. Then, all of a sudden, one of his cameras caught something coming out of the trees. It was something big, and he decided to follow the heat signal to get a better visual. He quickly got out of the tent, and the darkness in the woods swallowed him. Although he had a flashlight, he still struggled to see. He could not spot the creature. It was as if the creature had disappeared as soon as it heard the commotion of him rushing out of his tent. His heart was racing, and he was still pretty fearful, feeling like he was prey in the darkness. Seeing that he could not catch the creature by storming and running after it, he decided to try a new strategy. For this, he called for reinforcements from his crew members. Let it come to us. Instead of chasing the creature, which was proving to be really hard, they decided to let the creature come to them. But for this strategy to work, they needed bait. Russell, being a seasoned survivalist, decided to volunteer to become the bait. In his mind, he thought that should the creatures come for him, he would have a better chance of surviving than any other member of the crew. Or so he thought. As he surveyed the woods, Bryce and other crew members were tracking his every move with the camera. At first, everything was good. The surveillance footage looked good, and they could clearly see Russell. Seeing that they were not getting much action, Russell decided to walk further into the woods to see if the creatures would follow him. Then, from nowhere, it appeared.
Yeah, we do see you on the surveillance array. Looking good, buddy.
Awesome, man. Let me know if there's anything I need to pay attention to.
Copy that.
Thank you, Bryce.
Stay safe.
From behind the trees up the hill, they saw a creature moving fast towards Russell. While Mireya was also in that direction, the way the creature moved did not seem human at all. Seeing this, Bryce and the team quickly radioed Russell, who, upon receiving the message, asked for guidance from the team since it was hard for him to see anything in the dark woods. Their job was to use the footage to direct Russell away from the creature, far enough for him to at least capture an image of whatever was coming towards him. The creature was coming from the east side of Russell. It was about 50 yards away, and it was closing in fast.
Hey, Russ, we see a target making its way towards you, and it is moving, man.
Are we looking downhill, uphill, or in front of me in the direction I'm moving? Guide me.
It is to your east, probably about 50 yards, and moving in.
As he followed the trail, Russell heard some noises. Something had definitely been there, and they had left signs around, not to mention a pretty strong stench. a typical scent they had experienced while on one of their expeditions in Alaska. With these signs, Russell knew that they were in the presence of Bigfoot. The closer he got to where Bryce had told him that the target was, the weirder and louder the noises got. But Russell was not about to lose his target by running away or hiding. He had already risked his life by becoming bait, and he wanted his sacrifice to pay off. Knowing that by now, the creature ought to have been really close, Russell went in the direction of the weird noises.
Did you hear that? Something broke a branch out here in front of us.
But as he got closer, he heard something break a branch about 100 yards from him. After asking how long he was away from the creature, Bryce informed him that if he stayed that course, he would be able to intercept the creature. Hearing this, Russell decided to move towards where the creature was thought to be. On the other side of the mountain, Mireya was following a heat signal they had seen a bit earlier. Bryce did some surveillance for her, and he noticed not one, but two different heat signatures of strange-looking humanoid creatures moving in her direction. The woods were dark, and it was raining heavily. This meant that whatever Bryce was looking at in his thermal camera was not a group of loggers. It was rare for loggers to cut down trees when it was raining, leave alone at night. On top of that, the rain and the darkness made seeing really difficult for Mireya, and she had to rely on the visual feedback from Bryce.
Holy Hey Mireya, we're picking up 2 targets, not just one.
Being fearless, Mireya got closer to the zone she had been told about by Bryce to get more information. Although they were trying their best to get the information, the weather conditions made it very difficult for them to see anything. But there was definitely something close to Mireya. When Bryce asked Mireya if she noticed anything, she told him she couldn't see or hear much because of the weather. The fog made it hard to track anything, and things were only getting worse. The surveillance team was losing sight of the second signature moving between the trees. The fog made it harder for them to keep track. Despite this, they urged Mireya to keep walking in the same direction, saying she might still connect with the creature if she kept going. It was a bold decision for Mireya, knowing she had 2 targets and one had already disappeared. But what made it truly terrifying was that she was now heading straight toward the last spot where the creature had been seen. Would she face it alone? Mireya used her flashlight to scan the trees, hoping to catch any sign of movement in the direction she was heading. But everything seemed to be working against her. The steep terrain was extra smooth and dangerous, thanks to the rain that made every step harder. The downpour didn't just make the ground slippery. It swallowed out all other sounds, leaving Mireya unable to hear much of anything. It was like moving through the dark, completely blind. Despite searching tirelessly through the night, neither Mireya nor Russell saw a thing. Each time they got close to something, it vanished, slipping away like it was deliberately avoiding them. The question hung in the air. Why would it go to such lengths to stay hidden? The next day, the team shifted their focus. They searched for footprints and checked an area where Russell had seen what looked like tracks left by a Bigfoot family. Would this finally be the breakthrough they were chasing? While their search turned out to be a goose chase despite all their efforts, some witnesses have seen Bigfoot up close and even taken pictures of the elusive creature. Bigfoot images go viral. On one dark, quiet night, a man found himself face to face with a nightmare he could never have expected. The man remains anonymous, not willing to let his identity be public, but his story has spread like wildfire because he captured something horrifying. Clear images of what can only be described as Bigfoot staring straight through his window. How did his story begin? It all started as an innocent escape that quickly turned into a scary memory he'll never shake. Seeking peace, the man had retreated to a small cabin deep in Washington's wilderness, far from towns, people, and the constant noise of everyday city life. He was searching for a silent environment, hoping the ancient trees and the serene winds would help him recharge. But nothing could prepare him enough for what he was about to encounter. On his second night, as he sat alone by the fireplace, soaking in the silence, a shadow appeared. At first, it was nothing, just something catching the corner of his eye. Maybe it was just the wood settling in. At least, that's what he thought. But as he got up to close the blinds, his heart dropped. Outside, through the cold glass of the cabin window, a face was watching him, and to make matters worse, it wasn't human. The figure's face was big, framed by a mess of tangled dark hair. Its deep-set eyes seemed to glow a little, cutting through the darkness with an eerie intelligence that made his body freeze in fear. It stood tall on two legs, partially hidden by shadows. He could feel it watching him, studying him, as if trying to figure him out. His skin produced goosebumps as fear gripped him. He had heard the stories and legends before, the ones people joked about. But now, staring into those piercing eyes, the jokes didn't feel so funny. He froze. His muscles refused to move, paralyzed by the realization that he was face to face with something he wasn't ready to believe. Finally, after gathering all the courage he had, he reached for his phone. His hands shook, making the first pictures blurry. The flashes lit up the creature's face, but it didn't react. If anything, the creature seemed interested, watching him tremble with his shaky hands like it was amused. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature turned and vanished into the darkness beyond the cabin's glow, leaving the man with nothing but his loud heartbeat and a deep, bone-chilling fear. Following this scary encounter, the man couldn't sleep. Hours passed, and with every noise and rustle from outside, he imagined the creature coming back. When dawn finally broke, he dared to look at the photos. Most were blurred messes, but a few captured a clear, undeniable outline of something massive and powerful lurking outside his window. Still shaken, he thought of sharing his experience with the world. On the one hand, he feared ridicule from the masses. This is because Bigfoot sightings, after all, often ended with accusations of hoaxes and attention-seeking. But he also knew he had witnessed something rare, maybe even groundbreaking. After much hesitation, he decided to post the pictures online, using a fake name to avoid public backlash. He uploaded them to several Facebook groups that focused on the subject, hoping to connect with people who might believe him.